Very special guest today on Catching Up with the BlueClaws. It's Chris Adamson. They call him Tank. He's in Australia, and he was to be the BlueClaws manager here in 2020 before the season that wasn't. But Chris, happy to join us now from Australia. Welcome. How are you?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
So, how quickly did everything go down? You were here or in Florida, in Clearwater, at spring training. How quickly did everything go down for you? And then how long were you actually in the U.S. before you went back?
It was super quick, actually. We're there for about a month between minicamp and the start of spring training. And I think there was a day that it started to slow down a little bit and there was some more on the news. I believe I might have actually spoken with you on the phone that day.
Yeah, we talked mid-March. I don't remember the exact date, but yeah.
Yeah. And then so we had a day off the next day just to see kind of where things were at. And at 4 a.m. the next morning, I was in a bus on the way to the airport to come home, and here we are. So yeah, it's a pretty crazy time, but obviously a lot of unfortunate circumstances. So just trying to make the best of it.
What's the summer been? Well, I guess it's your winter down there, but what's the baseball season been like? What have you been doing and how often have you been in touch with everybody back here with the Phillies?
The Phillies have done an outstanding job actually in keeping people engaged, particularly, even some of the Australian players and myself, and it's been really good in reaching out. We've had, these Zoom calls, between, 4 and 6 every week, which has actually been quite good. So we at least get to, talk shop a little bit and stay in tune with it. And we're, making some calls to some of our players as well, just to make sure that they're doing okay in these tough circumstances. So it's actually been, pretty good, albeit, a pretty tough time. But we're making the best of it. And yeah, the Phillies have been super supportive through the whole thing.
How did you end up with the Phillies in the first place?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, probably started a little bit with some of the guys coming down and playing for our team in Australia last year. Cole Stobie was one of them. I know he's been a BlueClaw the last couple of years. He was down there, and I guess the dialogue started just with me reporting on those guys and just, letting the Phillies know how they were doing, both on and off the field, and just, what they're working on. So it was a little bit of a two-way street in terms of communication. And from there, I was actually in Japan with the national team for the Premier 12 tournament, and kind of got a text from Josh Bonifay, our farm director, one night there, and numerous phone calls later, and here we are. So yeah, extremely thankful for the opportunity, that's for sure.
How long had you managed in the Australian League?
So I'd managed for 3 years prior to that. So this coming winter will be my 4th season managing, and prior to that, I was a bench coach for 2 years. So been around the game coaching for a little while. After playing, I kind of shut down the playing a little bit earlier just to kind of focus on coaching a little bit. And yeah, so I've had a little bit of experience, but yeah, I was really excited for this year and just getting it to do it every day for 6 or so months, and hopefully things get back to somewhat normal next year for us.
Are you managing again our winter, your summer? Are they going to have a relatively normal Australian league this summer, your summer?
Yeah. There's a couple of tweaks that they've had to make. So there's almost like some little hubs or bubbles that they're working with to kind of control the interactions with the greater community. But at this stage, it's slightly more condensed than it normally is, but effectively we're still going to have a season, and there's still going to be international players coming in, mainly from obviously North America. So it's going to be as normal as it can be given the circumstances. So it's exciting, and everyone's pretty pumped to get back on the field.
Was coming to manage in the U.S. and coach in the U.S., was that something that had been on your mind, or, like when you filed those reports for Josh Bonifay and the other organizations for which you're coaching players and managing players, is it something on your mind that, hey, I'd like to stay in these guys' good graces because maybe someday I'd like to go manage in the U.S., or did it kind of just catch you off guard a little bit?
It wasn't necessarily the reason I was doing it, but because I always wanted the organizations to feel as comfortable as they could with their guys being down with us, because a lot of it is quite unknown, both for the organizations, but the kids in particular. So I always wanted to create as much comfort for them. But I guess in the back of my mind, I had always wanted to have an opportunity in the States, just to see what it was like and see how we would do. But in saying that was by no means I guess, the rationale behind, doing the reporting, but it's just something that, came as a bit of a byproduct, which, as I said, I'm extremely thankful for.
Now, you had played a little bit in the U.S. Tell us about your time here.
Yeah, so I went through the college system. So I was in Texas for my entire college career. I went to a junior college in Texas called Clarendon College up in the panhandle of Texas, which was an unbelievable experience. It was, I was from Sydney at the time, so big city, and went to a town of about 1,200 people and lived there for a couple of years, which was an eye-opener. And then I transferred to Angelo State University in San Angelo, Texas, and finished my degree and played. And it was one of the greatest times of my life. Just, the life experience and getting an education whilst playing baseball. It's something that, I'm extremely thankful for. And it was set me up in pretty good stead for the rest of my career back in Australia.
How did you end up at those two, or at Clarendon first? How did you end up there among all the junior colleges in the United States?
That's a good question, actually. There'd been a few Australians go through that program before. So there was a little bit of, I guess there was some connections that were already in place with some of the guys in the coaching staff there, and I made a couple of national squads back in Australia, and those coaches in the States, had their connections in Australia as well, so they would kind of let them know, hey, we're looking for X, Y, and Z, and I literally just got a call one day out of the blue, and that was kind of before there was the internet was as prevalent with Zooms and stuff like that, so there was just regular phone calls and then sending paperwork through the mail at the time. So it was a pretty slow process, but just got a call from West Texas one day, and a couple of months later, there I was. It was
That's
great.
Awesome. Obviously, the way baseball has gone in general, and certainly specifically with the Phillies, has been more along the the analytical, the scientific. What kind of background do you have in that regard, and how did that help you catch on with the Phillies in the first place?
Yeah, so when I was studying in the States, got a degree in sports science with a big, heavy focus on biomechanics as well. So studied that. And then when I moved back to Australia, I was playing, but the league back here for Australian-based guys anyway, it's not full-time. So I was working also, and I was working at essentially like a small college where I was in charge of teaching all about anatomy, physiology, and biomechanics. So I was kind of being able to upskill a little bit in terms of how the body actually worked. So that I found as things started to progress into a little bit more of a scientific realm, that being able to understand how the body was moving a little bit more, I feel that it did help me a little bit with my coaching, I feel, and just having a bit more understanding of, requirements on the body and those types of things. So that was something that I didn't probably realize the importance at the time when I was studying it, but I'm definitely very thankful for going down that avenue.
You worked with Baseball South Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that experience, and what kind of organization is that?
Yeah, so in Australia, very similar to USA Baseball over there. So there's Baseball Australia, which oversees all baseball in the country, and then each state has a governing body. So I was essentially the high performance manager there, which effectively looked after all of the top level youth programs. So I was coaching the senior team in our state in the Australian Baseball League, and then I was also almost like their minor league affiliates in a junior sense. So I was looking after all of those programs and running academies for them, and helping with coach education and all of those types of things. So to have a full-time job in baseball in Australia was pretty rare. So it was an awesome experience, and just what it took to learning different facets of the game, and just to try and be as well-rounded as we could, and set a program that gets the kids on the right path.
How would you describe your managerial style?
Probably the number one thing for me is just communication, and being able to build relationships with players and the people around me. So on a team in any setting, there's people from all different backgrounds, and everyone's got so many different things happening in their life. So one of the things for me is spending a lot of time and actually building relationships is one of the key things, because it's it's one of those things, you could know everything in the world about a topic, and whether it's baseball or whatever, but unless that player in this instance, knows that you actually care about them as a person and a player, then I think that the knowledge is almost a secondary type thing. So for me, it's just trying to build as good a relationship as possible, and just understand that at the end of the day, we're there to serve them as players. If we help them on their journey, because that's our goal. We want to develop them as best we can so they can move up the chain and, be playing in Philadelphia one day. So, for us, I just want them to believe that we're there for their best interest, and there might be some chats at times that, are a little bit more robust or, a little bit more critical, for lack of a better term. But as long as they know that we've got their best interest at heart, I think that's one of the biggest things that I try and focus on.
How has baseball grown in Australia over the last, say, 15, 20 years?
It's been huge. It's sneaky big in the junior ranks. And then one of the biggest competitions we have down here is competing with a lot of the other more traditional Australian sports. Your different football codes. So you've got your rugbies and your Australian rules football, and then also with your cricket. So as a whole in the junior ranks, it's actually quite good. The biggest challenge for us is actually keeping those really good athletes in the game. So that's where the Australian Baseball League is doing a great job in showing that there is a pathway available for those kids, not only in Australia, but also, if they want to choose to go the college route or straight into professional baseball, whatever it may be. So it's a good eye opener for them, and it's continuing to grow and evolve. So it's really exciting.
If you're a baseball player growing up in Australia, who was the guy that, I guess 20 years ago, Graham Lloyd, Dave Nielsen, he's Australian, right? The catcher. Yep. Who else and like who would you look up to when you were playing when you were younger?
Yeah, so I mean, I was a catcher, so Dave Nielsen was probably my guy. Anytime you could see Australia is, very similar to the States. We're pretty patriotic, and when we see, someone from little old Australia, almost punching above their weight a little bit on the world stage, it's pretty cool. And seeing, Graham Lloyd winning rings and Dave Nielsen was an all-star, it was really cool. And then I was good family friends with Grant Balfour, who was another closer who played with Tampa and then came up with the Twins and then Tampa and Oakland. So he was someone that I really rooted for as well. He was someone that, knowing him personally was pretty cool, and just seeing him go out there and do his thing was pretty cool.
The BlueClaws have had a good amount of guys from Australia play here. Not all of them have made it to the big leagues, but a few of them have had a pretty long minor league career. Alan Schoenberger, Scott Mitchinson. There was a catcher named Joel Naughton from a few years ago, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out. And Kyle Glagoski was from New Zealand, but he played in the Australian League. He pitched here last year. Did you come across him at all?
Yeah, well, he actually he actually just signed with our team, so he's playing with us this winter. Yeah, so that was a good get. So we're going to claim him as an Australian for a while, and it just really depends on what's. Yeah, that's right. It just really depends on what sport we're playing at the time. If it's baseball, he can be Australian. If it comes to cricket and those other sports, he can be a New Zealander again.
Did you play cricket or any other footballs?
Yeah, I grew up playing rugby my whole life. My dad played a lot of rugby and cricket, so going down the baseball pathway wasn't necessarily the most logical one for me to begin with. So yeah, I played a lot of cricket at school and played rugby pretty much all the way through my school career until I chose to go to I kind of had to decide between that and pursuing baseball and going to the States. So yeah, I played a lot of that, and I still absolutely love the sport. So that's probably been one, I guess, silver lining through this whole thing, that I can come back and it's that season now. So there's stuff to watch on TV, even if there's no crowd or limited crowd. So it's been fun.
Who's your favorite rugby team?
The Penrith Panthers. They're a team from Sydney, and you got to. So I think all of New Jersey will be on the Penrith Panthers bandwagon, I think. So they just clinched the first place. So we're trying to do our thing in the playoffs in 2 weeks. So everyone jump on board.
We could be sister teams. They could be our sister rugby team.
Absolutely.
How did you start with baseball?
There wasn't too much to it, other than there was a kid on my street that was playing. He was a couple of years older than me, and I just tagged along one day to go to, they called it mini ball at the time, which was just a whole bunch of little kids playing t-ball. And I went there, and evidently they had a pretty good junior setup, and they were, really good coaches that just kept kids engaged, and it was just something that I really enjoyed straight off the bat. And then, yeah, just played it as a sport. And then, to be honest, I didn't think it could open doors for me as much as it had until I was quite a bit older. Like in the back end of my high school days. So with that, it was just something that I really enjoyed, and I had some pretty good mates that I was playing with as well. So it was a pretty good social thing, and it was and as you mentioned, seeing the Nilsons and those guys on TV back in the day too. That was something that was that little carrot, but it would seem to a fair way away. But it's something that it was a little bit left of center for an Australian kid to go and do that. But as I said, now it's grown exponentially, and it's a pretty common thing for kids to do now.
I know the games you're 14 hours ahead, so a
Yep.
7 o'clock Phillies game starts at 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. For you, have you been watching the big Phillies and just Major League Baseball in general now that you have the opportunity to?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty much get up and first thing that goes on is the TV. Yeah, and I'm watching all those games, and it's cool, having like a vested interest in a team. And because prior to this, I'd loved baseball and watch as much as I could, but I've never really followed the team. So having a bit more of a vested interest, it's really cool. And particularly seeing those young guys who have, come through the system, and, the guys like Alec Baum and those guys, that seeing the player development staff that have been around them over the last couple of years, it's just really cool. And it's a real good, I guess, incentive, to continue to help these guys in their journey, because it really does pay dividends, and it's really cool to see them succeed.
I know they hadn't started games yet. I guess they were probably a couple days away. But what were your impressions in spring training? Obviously a lot of coaches, coordinators, 250 players, all beautiful complex there. What were your early impressions of your first Philly spring training?
Oh, I mean, the first thing, to be honest, was like living the dream, to be honest with you. Just being able to wear a uniform and be on a field every day with, some of the most talented kids on the planet is something that, it's just, there was a lot of, moments where you kind of pinch yourself. So that was something that straight off the bat, I just couldn't believe how lucky I was. But then also just how welcoming everyone was, to be honest with you, both players and staff, the higher level staff, and everyone was just so welcoming and so willing to help. And, there was times I had a million questions and I was trying to find my feet, and everyone was super willing to help. And it was really indicative of just, as an organization, just being, really caring about people, and understanding that everyone's there for the same purpose and with the same greater goal. So it was just really, really amazing to be around. And even through this time with those Zoom calls and that, it's still going on. There's just genuine care for people as well, because everyone's in this together. So that was one thing for me that was awesome. And then there's some super talented kids running around in those backfields too. So there's a lot of upside. I know you've seen a lot of the young kids, and I know last year's team was, one of the youngest in professional baseball. So there's a lot of upside there, and it's really cool just to see them grow, not only as players, obviously, but also as people as they, mature and develop. It's really cool.
We had two guys from last year's team that are on the Phillies now, and a year and a half later, and Alec Bowman, Rafael Marchand, and to have that happen, to go from here to the big leagues in one calendar year is pretty rare. And then to have it happen with two guys, I know obviously this year is a unique year, but still, that's cool for us, and we're happy to see that. And then Rafael had his first home run the other night. He did not homer in the minors, 850 at bats, and then he hit a 3-run home run to tie a game last Friday,
awesome.
which was awesome. That was awesome. So, how did you get the nickname Tank?
Well, so I got that. I've had that for a long time. So I got that when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and essentially I was a pretty big kid when I was running around those t-ball fields, and I was bigger than the other kids, and I was as slow as a wet week. So
What does that mean?
Well, just like if it's been raining for a whole week, it feels like the week goes forever. So that's how slow I was. It felt like.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, a coach just called me Tank one day, and it stuck. And then to the point that a lot of people, particularly in baseball, didn't actually know what my real name was. So that was it was interesting, but it stuck, and I'm not overly tankish now, but so I think I might disappoint some people when they hear, Tank's coming and they expect this massive
Linebacker.
unit to
Yeah.
to walk in the room. Yeah, and they get disappointed when I walk in. So I've just got to try and impress them in other ways, I guess. But no, it's a handy nickname that just stuck from when I was a kid. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Well, we appreciate a few minutes. Obviously, this year wasn't what we hoped it was, and I'm sure for you. But we'll have hopefully we'll have one of these with your name on the back there for you coming up in April. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks so much. I know you got another Zoom call with the Phillies coming up here in a few minutes. So best of luck with that. Tell everybody that the BlueClaws folks said hello, and stay safe down there. And hopefully, good luck this season with the Giants,
Absolutely.
the Adelaide Giants. Right, people can go follow them.
Absolutely. Get
When's
on
opening
board.
day?
Right around Christmas time. So it's been pushed back.
So you got some time.
Yeah, so we've still got a little bit of time, and there'll be some familiar names and faces on our team from over there as well. So it'll be good for everyone to keep up to date with what's happening there. So it'll be fun.
Very cool. Best of luck. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you in April.
Awesome. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.